All right. Good evening, everybody. All right, how are we all doing? Give your typical New Jersey greeting over here, right? So, I always, it's been interesting. I've been mentioning how we've been lucky with the weather during the winter months. We'd have a snowstorm the week before. Well, this month we had a heat wave the week before, so we were very, very happy that it's much more seasonable weather. So, thank you for coming out, and another beautiful day. So, yeah, so let's get going with everything. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Okay, so as we always do, we thank our sponsors. We talk about what's new. We have Matt Flores here. He's a student here at Drew University. He's going to provide sort of a warm-up or introduction to the JDK Flight Recorder. And then I'll introduce Billy. And then we talk about some upcoming events after Billy's talk. What's coming up for us. We've had some updates. So, hey, Bhupendra. And then what Friends of the Garden State Jug are doing. I finally had a chance to go through everybody and update what they're doing. So that's good. All right, of course, Payara is our gold sponsor. As you know, they were purchased by Azul at the end of last year. So I don't know if we need to change our logo, but I'll try to get some guidance from them on that. And of course, Azul's been our silver sponsor. And our partner is DevNexus. The conference is in Atlanta, and it's the first week of April. I'm sure the call for papers will come out with probably sometime next month or September. So if you want to visit Atlanta, and that's the time to do so. Our per meeting sponsors, JetBrains, of course, they provide the licenses each month that we give away. Romanelli's is our local pizzeria that provides a nice discount for us to purchase. And they're right here in town, 5 minutes away. And then Jakarta EE, or the Eclipse Foundation, they provide crowd host video conferencing for all Java user groups. Our memberships, we are part of the Jakarta EE ambassadors. We're guest members of the Micro Profile Working Group, the Jakarta EE Working Group, and we do work with the Virtual Jug. All right, what's new? I just found out about this today. It is a Write Once, Run Forever, the Java story, featuring, of course, the father of Java, James Gosling. And this will be live next week from Friday on the 17th at 7 o'clock UTC, so that's probably about 2 o'clock our time. So yeah, the link there is for the trailer. And it's about 2 minutes long, and there are so many guests in that. Venkat's in there. Who else? I'm trying to remember who else. I'm drawing a blank. But
Brian.
Oh yeah, Brian Getz. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, so George, and yeah, so there's a whole bunch of folks in there. So it definitely, take the time to watch that if you can. It's, I know, during the workday, but find a conference room and watch it. This is true. Yeah, it's justify that, right? Yeah, so that is, like I said, I only found out because the Atlanta Jug is having a watch party on the 21st. So. Okay, so JDK 27 is in ramp down phase 1. Phase 2 is probably the 17th, I think. Right? Yeah, and these are the 9 JEPs. There was a 10th, but they decided to pull it. I forget why at the moment. But yeah, these are the 9 that you'll see live in September, or non-preview. So yeah, July 17th. So that's phase 2. September 14th will be the general availability.
Yeah, no, that's been available now
for
a number of releases. So, are you talking about make G1 the default garbage collector? I'm talking about ZGC. No, okay, yeah, no, yeah, it's still available. So yeah,
that's
standard hotspot builds will have GBC, G1, parallel, and serial.
Yeah,
It's a low latency or ultra low latency, and then also capable of handling massive heat as well.
yeah, good stuff. But in this case, it's going to G1's going to be the default. So post-quantum is in there, so there's a lot of security stuff. Of course, we have our post-quantum expert here in Barry Bird. So if you missed his talk at DevNexus, definitely find that video, especially if you're a math person. So Vector API is the 12th incubator, but I think that's going to change pretty soon because there was a in the mailing list, there was something about not adding new stuff to, maybe it was the Vector API or something else from the project Valhalla.
Yeah.
Yeah, it came out a month or so ago.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we're finally aiming to merge in the value objects, Jeff, which is
Oh, that's right.
first,
401. Yeah.
Yeah, 401, which is the first of the Valhalla features, into the mainline as a preview feature.
Yep.
And then that will allow Vector API to finally be promoted as a preview feature as well, which would be nice because I'm tired of having to explain it.
So, I know, it's just, and I think there was at one point it was at the 7th or something, and then they just put it to preview. I'm like, hey, wait a minute. Like then they fixed it. So, all right. So yeah, so that's a lot of stuff happening, in behind the scenes. So here's the release schedule. Yeah, show that already. So let's see. Oh, Jakarta EE12. There are 25 specs that'll be updated. It was 24. I think one of the XML specs is going to do that. Now, having said that, a lot of them are going to remove references to Security Manager, right? Jakarta Query is part of the platform and web profile. Agentic AI is going to be version 1 very soon. Was involved in helping Reza Rahman, and others. We're looking at the documentation, getting that squared away. All right, there's Billy. So, but first, before we have Billy, we have Matt Flores. He's a student here at Drew. You may have remember him a couple months ago giving a report from the Arc of AI conference that he attended. And then he's gonna help us out with some things behind the scenes here at the Garden State Jug. So welcome. So let's give him a round of applause.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me here again. So I'm basically going to be introducing you to the topic of JDK Flight Recorder. So I did spend the last 2 weeks having about helping out more frequently. So I hope to be making more appearances like this in the future. So the overview that I'm going to just talk about with the JDK Flight Recorder is what it is, why do we need it, and how exactly it's used. So what is a flight recorder? The name actually, it helped me understand it through the name, because a flight recorder, also known as a black box, is actually an actual piece of hardware that is found on aircraft that is used to measure their performance throughout the flight and evaluate it after the flight. So what happens is it basically keeps track of all of this and its changes throughout a flight. And so a way to see why this is necessary is, like, let's say an aircraft takes off and it has an engine failure in mid-flight, but during the flight you're able to resolve it, so everything goes as planned and it returns, it reaches its destination as planned. You still want to take a look at what happened there so that we can prevent that from happening in the future. So what would happen is that then the maintenance crew would remove the black box from the aircraft, and they would use that to analyze the data of what happened during the flight, and hopefully that'll allow them to catch the issue of what caused that engine to fail. And so now they can address that and make sure that does not happen again in the future. So in the case of Java, while you're programming, your program is running, what the JDK Flight Recorder does is it tracks all these different things of your program, you know, from memory usage to the exceptions you use to slow methods, their speed and performance. And it allows you to track that while the program is running, and then you can still look at the results afterwards to, you know, catch places where your program can really improve or fix any mistakes. So how to get it, this is actually something I ended up doing last night. What I did is I basically just went to the website here where you download the JDK mission control. For me, it was Windows, so I used the bottom link over here. After downloading it, it gives me a zip file that then I unzip, and it breaks it down into these two files over here. And then by accessing the top folder, which is the JDK mission control, and I select the jmc.exe, that's where I can access the application. And now the question is, how does that work? That also took me a while to understand, but here I actually set up a small demo for you guys to see it. So I wrote this very brief and small Java program. As you can see, it basically has an infinite loop, which in this case I need because the whole point of the JDK Flight Recorder is that it's recording, you know, a large program and not just some small basic code that normally students would write. So I want this loop to basically be running so that I can give the flight recorder time to really analyze what it's doing. So if right here I start it, you're going to see that it starts running now. And now what I want to do here is again open my JMC. And now I get to this page over here. I want to select here on the JVM browser. As you can see over here in this flight recorder demo, that's the program I'm running right now, so it knows I'm running it. So I'm going to do this here, and I'm going to start the flight recording. Here it tells me the recording time. In this case, because we're just doing a simple demo, I'm just going to put it to 30 seconds here. And then I click finish. And so now we basically just wait because it's going to use those 30 seconds to analyze the program that I'm running as it's running. And there we go. So here are the results. Now I can access things like, for example, my memory. And here, as a computer science student, I can be honest and tell you I have mostly no idea what any of this is. But from my perspective, yeah, from my perspective, though, it still looks pretty cool. It, you know, shows a lot of information. If this was part of a, you know, school assignment, I really have no idea what I would do with this. But as I said, it looks cool. And for those of you that work professionally with these kinds of things, I'm sure that this will be more useful than I guess it would be for me at this time. But as you can see, it shows you all of that. And now I'm just going to go back and end this infinite running loop. Okay, so that is how it works. So overall, why use the JDK Flight Recorder? As I said, it finds performance problems. It helps you diagnose the crashes. It records the events with minimal impact to your performance. I don't want to say none at all because I have seen from what I've researched that sometimes it will do some small minimal changes. It'll help you understand your application behavior, especially when errors are coming up or simply not getting the results you want and having to figure out through all those lines of code what's going on. So the final point is it really does just save you time. And overall, I personally, even as a student, think this is some you know, pretty cool software to use. As I said, as of now, I don't know what I'd be using it for, but I'm going to pass it now to Billy so that we can actually learn more about how to use it. So thank you all.
All right, thank you. Good. Good. All right, so I'm going to introduce Billy. So
Okay.
you don't need these slides now. So yeah. Oh wait, need the reading glasses.
Did you want me to?
I'm going to introduce Billy. Yeah. All right. So we're happy to have Billy here. What, for the fourth time now? I think three. One.
At least three.
Yeah. I think one was virtual when we're still doing that. Yeah. So I think. So thank you for coming back. You know, we must be doing something right if you keep coming back, right? So, so yeah. So Billy is a Java developer advocate with the Java Platform Group at Oracle. With over a decade of experience in Java, Billy brings a passion for helping developers find ways to reduce tedious work, such as project initiation, deployment, testing, and validation through automation and adopting the latest features and tools in the Java ecosystem. Outside of work, Billy enjoys traveling, playing kickball, and cheering on the Kansas City Chiefs. Billy also co-organizes the Kansas City Java Users Group, and I think you're also part of KCDC as well. So on a personal note, you know, I first met you 2019 at Code One. I think you were still with IBM at the time. So, but then when you joined Oracle, you know, you and Nikolai and Anna Maria, if you ever go to dev.java or the other one, yeah, or Java, yeah, the SIP of Java, all those little video vignettes, these guys are hilarious, okay? So all the little annotations between Nikolai and Billy, it makes it really, I mean, you learn something and it's fun. And that's the whole point, I think, you know? So I really appreciate those. When you're doing the SIP of Java, they were always released on a Monday. Yeah. And it was like lunchtime. So I'd sit and have lunch and I'd look for your Twitter post. I'm like, oh, it's ready. Okay, good. So now I can, yeah. Yeah, it was good though. So and there's others. Jose Palmard does his Java Cafe, I think it's called.
Yeah. Jeff Cafe. But he also does AC the interview, where he kind of does something similar. So he's done it much more now, like a short 1-minute video on various Java topics.
Yeah. So he's pretty cool to watch. I love the way he talks. You know, and he has the cup of coffee in his hand and all that. And so Nikolai does the Inside Java screencaster, right? Yeah. So so check those out. Definitely, you can learn a lot about the Java programming language. So so you know, thank you for all that, what you guys do over there at Oracle. So without further ado, Billy, floor is yours.
All right, thank you.
Oh, either way.
We're good? I didn't manage to mess up. Dang it, I was hoping to mess up your system. Just oh, that sounds like a challenge now. All right, yeah, no. So actually, yeah, no more questions. You already covered it all. So oh, great introduction to JDK Flight Recorder. So I said, yeah, I'll continue and expand upon what was already covered. And as mentioned, so already have all my introduction stuff out of the way. One other piece of important information, please at any point feel free to ask questions here for you to learn about JDK Flight Recorder. And also, you know, I was actually just doing a presentation earlier with a group of developers at a company. And at one point I asked, has anyone used or even heard of JDK Flight Recorder? And it's a room of about 15 or so people, and no one raised their hand. So don't feel bad about not knowing about JDK Flight Recorder. Unfortunately, it's something that is overlooked, which is very unfortunate. And also Michael already covered, so we have things like dev.java for learning more about JDK Flight Recorder and other things. We also have our insight.java. It's a good way to keep up with the latest of what's happening in Java, like the OpenJDK. We also have our YouTube channel and our podcast. It's actually nice. We're actually regularly releasing episodes on our podcast now. We're taking like a lot of the videos like Nikolai, or when we do an Inside Java newscast, we release that also as a podcast episode if you just prefer listening versus watching. So yeah, I can kind of quickly go through a few of these things as already covered. You know, we have JDK Flight Recorder. You touched on it a bit as far as the overhead, kind of like with a actual flight recorder. You know, if there was a very heavy, like a flight recorder is like weighed like 2 tons or required a huge amount of energy or something like that, you know, it wouldn't be used in real life. And in just following that lead, the JDK Flight Recorder also has an extremely low overhead. It should be sub 1% for when using default settings. And default settings are typically very adequate for capturing a rich amount of data. So you can use it continuously in production, which again, to what was already covered, is that's very good for whenever like a crash happens at 2 a.m. or something, or you have some sort of unusual behavior. If you have it constantly running in the background, then you would be able to start tracing back and debugging perhaps what went wrong with your application. I also do in this video that's now was released a few years back, I kind of give a deep dive into the technical background of JDK Flight Recorder. So if you're kind of interested in how that works and also like how it's able to not have such an impact on the actual throughput of an application, you can kind of check that video out and you can kind of be like, okay, this is why it won't actually have too much of an impact. A big part of it is that there's not any sort of a blocking operation as it's writing to the files. It's all kind of happening asynchronously in the background. So as of JDK 25, and maybe a few more events have been added, there's already 190 predefined JDK Flight Recorder events. If we kind of zoom in here a little bit, we can see a few of them, things like starting a thread, when a thread's dumped, when it's a thread stopped, file reads, file writes, socket reads, socket writes. Already out of the box, you're gaining a lot of good coverage as to what is happening within your application. That said, let's actually kind of go ahead and quickly get into a demo of using JDK Flight Recorder. And so for this demo, I'm just simply using the Spring Boot Flight Clinic application. It's a simple application that was put together by the Spring team for demonstrating Spring Boot, but at least provides some sort of an application that provides a little bit of complexity to demonstrate. So, you know, now maybe I should just vibe code something up with AI to test this out with instead of relying on Spring Boot. Okay, that's it. Sorry, I need to kill my previous running instance of it. So one small thing is that what you are demonstrating, the control panel, is JDK Mission Control, which is a great tool for both controlling JFR on a running JVM, as well as then also providing analysis of it as well. But actually JFR itself is actually built into the JDK itself. So to actually use it, you don't need, if you have the JDK, or at least you have a hotspot derivative of the JDK, you already have JFR. So, and to run it, there are a variety of ways of doing it. Probably the most common would be through JVM arguments. So in this case, I am using start flight recording. And then this will allow you to start up the JDK Flight Recorder on the startup with your JVM. Or if you want, there's also an option to delay the recording if you don't want to include the actual startup process as a part of your recording. But that's what I'm doing here. And then I'm here giving this a file name. And because I'm just using this for testing purposes, I'm using dup on exit to be true. So like I'll run my application for some short amount of time, kill it, and then that will automatically cause it to create a or take all the information and then put it into a JFR recording that I can analyze later. In a real production setting, you probably wouldn't use this because you would have a persistently running application. And we'll get into a little bit of maybe some settings to consider when you're actually running this in production. But all that said, let me go ahead and start it up. And yeah. And so yeah, this is the application that is currently running right now. And again, it's just a very simple RESTful service application simulating a pet clinic and patients at a pet clinic. Interesting. And there's Felix. No problem. Oh, yeah. That's someone else's code. That's not part of the test. So here, as you can see, there is a recording. That's the name of the file I created, and you can see then here that the recording file was recorded. I realized, so I'm actually working with a new system, and one of the things I realized as Brian was giving this presentation was I didn't install JDK Mission Control, but that's fine. Actually, there is a number of ways you can do analysis of JFR as well. So there's also the JFR command line tool. If I was to run that, this gives us a number of different options for analyzing a JFR recording. So JDK Mission Control, as was demonstrated earlier, along with being a control panel that you can use to control your actively running application, it's also a very great and rich GUI tool for reviewing it. And it's really good for maybe when you're trying to do analysis of an application, like, hey, like you're writing out like a new application, or maybe you're doing some sort of major refactoring, and you can kind of use that as an overall way of giving like a very high or broad level analysis of an application as you're trying to work with it. Where the JFR tool can be kind of useful is maybe for when you have a better understanding of your application, you're more looking to do tuning to it. But one very useful thing that can at least help you with giving some high level analysis that was added, I think back in JDK, somewhere around JDK 21, is JFR view. And so these, as can be seen here, there are a number of different already provided views to it, and these can give you some high-level analysis of an application. So for example, if I wanted to get like some high-level analysis of my garbage collector, I could do JFR view, and I believe it's GC, and then recording.jfr, and this shows like all the garbage collections that occurred during the lifetime of my application. So even though I was only running it for a few minutes, it already had about 20 or so garbage collections. So that just kind of shows you just how much is always happening within your application. Sorry, was there? Oh, someone just sees.
I had a question.
Oh, yes.
How quickly does this file grow? I mean, is it possible to like roll it over or something?
Yeah, and I'll get to that later, because that is something that you would want to consider if you're running it in production, that you would definitely want to make sure you set size limits and do rollover, because otherwise it'll just grow infinitely, and that might be a bit of an issue. But yeah, very good question. I'll get to that a little bit later in the presentation. But yeah, so here this can be a way of providing
analysis on like for garbage collections, and actually something we can do because you brought up GDC earlier. If I was to rerun this now, so I'll do GDC recording. All right, so now I'm rerunning this application and I'm using the Z garbage collector, which you were talking about earlier when Michael was giving the what's happening in the JDK presentation. So I'll just, again, just do a little clicking around, not that it really matters too much for this. So I'll stop it again. And now if I was to do this, you can see obviously a very substantial difference in the behavior between them. So in this case, only 3 garbage collections happened. Also, if we look here, the longest of the garbage collections was 1/10 of a millisecond, and the other ones were much less than that. Whereas here there was a whole lot more of garbage collections, and also the pauses were much longer. This doesn't necessarily mean that GC is a better garbage collector than G1. All garbage collectors have a series of trade-offs. So with the ZDC garbage collector, it's a fully concurrent garbage collector. So that means there's never effectively no pauses. So like all of this is really happening. It's just kind of like a brief sync point with the application to continue work. But the trade-off with like ZGC compared to G1 is because it's fully concurrent, it's always occupying some number of CPU threads in the background to perform all of the garbage collection actions. So the trade-off there is that you would have a bit of a reduction in throughput for your Java application, or for your application relative to using the G1 garbage collector. So as always, there's no best garbage collector. Each of them always have a number of trade-offs. So it will always be a matter of whatever works best for the specific use case you're trying to do with your application. But this also shows you a really great way of how JFR already can be used to do analysis on an application, do comparative analysis. It's like you're not trying to do some sort of guesswork or do some sort of high-level overview. You can get some really deep, specific statistics on your application to see like exactly how many garbage collections happened, how long they took. Obviously, in a more real-world scenario, you would actually be throwing some load at it, and actually I can maybe simulate that also here in a moment. Actually, you know what? Let's not talk about it. Let's go ahead and do it. So I'll go ahead and run this again. Actually, it doesn't really matter. Yes. All right, so this is just a simple command line tool that gives like a very nice looking presentation, and all it's doing is endlessly firing off requests at an arbitrary endpoint, in this case hitting the application I just started running. So I'll pause this again, and then I will run it again here now with once again using G1. So I guess also one thing worth pointing out, so it completed 65,000 responses over a 10-second period. using ZGC, and I'm pretty sure it's going to probably complete more here using G1 maybe. Yeah. So yeah, that shows you like it completed nearly twice as many responses using G1 as it did GDC. But again, if we were to use JFR view, GC, here again, you know, the pauses are all very short, and there's a whole lot fewer of them. Whereas if again I went back to the recording, there we go. Forgot to stop it.
JVMs, and I guess now you guys have an alternative to that.
Yeah, Azul, I believe theirs is the C4 garbage collector, which I believe it's also supposed to be a pauseless garbage collector. I never really worked with it actively, but I think it's kind of running on some of the same principles where it always has background processes running to do all the garbage collection, which allows it to minimize its pause times as well. But that's all I really know about the high level. I'm not going to I haven't done any comparisons between ZDC and C4 and
Purpose though, right?
maybe. I just haven't actively worked with it enough. I think it would be based upon, I guess, the high level of what I understand of it. But as far as which is quote unquote better or worse, you know, that you would have to do your own analysis for that, running your own application, because that's ultimately what matters is how it runs with your application. But yeah, again, this then shows you that so it was able to complete more transactions, but you know, there's obviously a lot more garbage collections happening, and there's a lot more pause time. So like here in this case between G1, GC, and GDC, like what do you care more about? Do you care more about minimizing latency time, or do you care more about overall throughput? Again, there's no right answer, but this is this way. And let's see, I think there's also like CPU load. That this could be also another option for doing analysis. So yeah, this is showing like some CPU load statistics, and I'm imagining with ZDC it's going to be much higher. Actually, it ended up being a bit lower. So, but there's a bunch of different tooling to be used for that you can use for comparing. JFR provides a lot of tooling that you can use to do comparisons, that you're not just doing guesswork with it, that you can actually say like, yeah, here's some real hard statistics comparing, you know, my system with one configuration versus another configuration. And from there, you can then do what analysis within your organization to say which configuration, you know, would be better for your purposes. Again, I can't answer that for you because, you know, you might have more memory than you ever know what to do with. So if you're using a lot more memory, then that's fine. Or maybe you're very memory constrained, in which case, if it's using a lot of memory, then that would be very bad. You know, I can't answer that, but these are the tools that you can use for that. Continuing a little bit more into ZDC. So here I was showing how you can start JFR at startup, but there's also, you can also start it, let's consistently use it for this one. So let's just say we started an application without starting JFR with it. So yeah, already start our application. And then at some point while it's running, like we run into some sort of issue with the application. You know, it's like that one issue that happens like once in every blue moon where all of a sudden it starts acting very slow. Now, of course, you will end up maybe having to kill that application and restart it, but something you could do before you did that is you could, in this case, I'm finding the processes that are running, and then I can use J command, and I can pass in it the process ID. I can use it to actually go ahead and start a in-flight or start a JFR recording on an already running Java process. So this could be a good way of making sure you can collect a lot of analysis about a application that's having trouble, or even just an application that's already running that you just realize, hey, we forgot to turn it on for that. Let's get it running. And you can also dump information and whenever you want out of the application arbitrarily by using the JFR dump command as well. So it's some just great ways of the flexibility that JFR provides you. All right, so one question you were asking also then is about rolling files over. So actually, before we do that, that's, oh, okay, yes, oh. So yeah, here are like the pretty trivial recordings that we did, and we can see here that like one is that 50 megabytes, and this other one's 4 megabytes or something like that. They're very data rich, so they can increase in size pretty rapidly. So if you're running it in a production setting, it would be important to consider settings various rollover behaviors for it. And so two good ways of doing that would be with the arguments max age and max size. Now in this case, I'm using very small numbers. This is saying a max age of 5 minutes or a max size of 10 megabytes. That's not a realistic production scenario. This is just good for demonstration purposes. So we are not here all night if I was wanting to demonstrate this feature. But you can maybe set like a max age of 12 hours or like 6 hours, 12 hours, 1 day, a max size of 1 gigabyte or whatever whatever makes sense again to your purposes. And then once that limit is hit, whichever comes first, if you're setting both, then you'll dump that file and then it will continue the recording. So that way you're not just ending up with endlessly massive recordings on your system, which could create storage issues potentially. And from there, you can set up whatever kind of retention policies make sense. Keeping the most recent n number of recordings. Most recent 5, most recent 10. Again, whatever makes sense for you there, that's up to you. It's going to vary on a case-by-case basis. But yeah, max age and max size would be two very important settings to consider when you're running this in production, just to have a limit on your file sizes. You probably won't really need to work with this too much. There's also the flight recorder options. This can give you some more fine-grained options for how you would like perhaps where the recordings are temporarily stored as they're being built. You can kind of configure that. Most of the time you won't need to do this, like even in a production scenario, most of the time the defaults should work without being modified.
I noticed you have like some file record data tracing. So does it actually provide the capabilities that normally JVM profiler would to actually trace the stack of the Java method calls and figure out where the bottleneck might be or something?
Exactly. So that is a newer feature that was added in JDK 25. Yeah. Yes, yeah. So, one also important thing is, so this JFR view tool I am using to do analysis on it. Again, I can't remember offhand which version of the JDK it was added in. It was something post Java 17. I'm pretty sure it's either 17 or between 17 and 21. Now, let's just say maybe you're running on JDK 8 or 11 still in production. JFR is very backwards compatible. So if you still wanted to use the JFR view tool, you could use that on a recording from an older Java version. So yeah, I could run this Spring Boot Pet Clinic application with JDK 8 and have it produce a recording, and then use JFR view from my JDK 26 right now to do analysis on it. So that's one of the also really nice things, is that it's backwards compatible all the way to JDK 7 U40, which I'm hoping no one is running that in production, because that would be very insecure. So let's see, what else? So yes, method tracing. So one feature, as you astutely recognize, is we now have method tracing. And so you can kind of configure individual events within your command line. This probably wouldn't be typically how you would do that, but it's good for this demonstration purposes. And that's actually incorrect. Fix that. So, oops. So in my code here, within this JFR controller, oh, that's not it. Within that controller here, like if I wanted to trace the calls to this method, I could do that by taking the fully qualified name and then including the method name for it, and then calling the JDK method trace event, and then telling it which method to do this on. So if I was to run this again with this on, oh, sorry, I forgot to shut down. Fantastic. So I call this endpoint, which is calling the endpoint that I set the method trace on. And then let's see, what was the oh, that was supposed to work. Let's make sure that I didn't. Show that list. The joys of live demos, they never want to always work with you at times. Let me try one more time. well, I'll get back to that in a moment. I'm not quite sure why I was running. It was running earlier though. Trust me, that's what they all say. But one, but it's true. But it's true this time. But one thing I do want to mention though is also like to your point of like maybe you're starting to see some sort of issue happening within your application. And maybe you forgot to set this method trace initially. Like it's like, oh, okay, we think this is like the method where this is maybe happening. Like you put like the trace on a database method. Once again, you can configure a live running application using the and I think even so. Let me just. Perfect. So like in this case, I already have like an existing application configured to be running, but you can also I already have a JFR recording already happening, but I can also configure a live running application, and I know it's in here somewhere. In this case, this is using method timing. But if you're like, okay, like our Jakarta stuff, that Jakarta stuff is always going to be trouble, and you want to do some method timing on it. Oh, that didn't get Michael going. That makes me so upset. It's not even. I was teasing I'm using Jakarta as an example. I'm saying it's trouble. But let's just say we have like a live running application, and we're seeing some sort of issue, or we're like, oh, we wanted to reconfigure it again. You are able to, like take the application, the process ID, JFR configure, and then you are able to pass arbitrary configuration. In this case, I'm telling it to do method timing to a live running application. So that's like another very powerful feature of JFR, is that like so often there can be times where I know where like I'm running an application and like it's running and it's like, dang, you forgot to do some sort of configuration, you want to do something else. Or I know so often how I would do debugging applications back in the day is by putting a bunch of logging statements. And if you needed to do a new logging statement, of course, you would have to add that into the code, recompile the code, and redeploy it, which could be a very taxing way of doing debugging. The ability to do reconfiguration of your application while it's still running can be very powerful and very easy, and also allows you to maintain the state if you are seeing some sort of unusual state, to collect information about it before then stopping the application. I'll have to figure out why that wasn't working. Again, I swear it was working earlier. Yeah, then good. Thou protest too much.
To watch the video, the JDK 5 rollout, you demonstrated that.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be in there.
What were the couple of other features? Oh, that's right. So one of the really powerful features also of JDK Flight Recorder, so it has closing in on 200 built-in events, but you can also write your own custom events as well. And writing a custom event is actually a very easy task at its simplest form. So what we have here is the JDK JFR event. So all you need to do is simply extend jdk.jfr.event, and you now actually have your own custom event. Now, of course, a event without any information in it isn't too useful. So you can add any arbitrary field or you can add arbitrary fields if you want. In this case, like I'm checking like a transaction ID and like how long it takes to execute. The fields you can add can be any of the primitive types and string. If you attempt to capture any other type of fields, JFR will simply ignore it. So if you create your own like if you create like a record for capturing information, you try to put it all on a record, JFR will just simply not record it. It will just completely ignore it. It will and silently in the background. But yeah, so any any primitive type and string can be captured. Additionally, you have a number of different annotations. Most of these annotations are for providing metadata information. So in this case, like I'm providing a name for my transaction. Generally, the method to follow would be just to provide maybe like your, so if you don't provide a name, it will just use the fully qualified name for this class. But you would probably recommend, so like here, to give a more concrete example, you would like to provide your own kind of organizational name. So like in this case, like Garden State Jug, to denote that, hey, this is your specific event, to make it easier to separate it out from any other events. So if I was to do a JFR summary on, you can see here all these events start with JDK. That's just to signify that they're all originally built by the JDK team and included within the JVM itself, or within the JDK itself. So that's, or so then additionally you can provide also like a description to provide additional metadata information. And then also you can provide things like categories to also, of course, categorize it. For example, when JDK Mission Control was being shown earlier, there's a view panel on there where it can show like all the event types. And one of the way you can categorize events is based upon the category of it. So if you write a number of different events within your application, you know, you can, this is a way you can categorize them based upon, you know, their relationships. So creating an event is pretty simple. Adding an event into your code is also not too, well, it's a bit heavyweight looking from a code perspective, but it's the actual runtime impact would typically be very small. So within your code, you would create a new instance of your events, as I'm doing here with my transaction event, and then you would call begin on this. And this would begin the internal timer for, you know, how long it takes for the code to execute between the begin and then the end. In this case, yeah, I'm calling end, and that stops the internal timer for how long it took the whatever code you're testing to execute. From there, then you can set fields, and then committing it will then commit it to be included in the JFR recording. You can also, if you wanted to, just call commit. That will also end the recording. Where you would consider wanting to separate the two is if you're collecting data about the event, and that can maybe be a somewhat involved process that could affect the overall event timing that you're interested in from a performance perspective. That's why you may separate out the end from the commits. Also, what you can do as well, so like you wouldn't maybe want to execute this stuff if it's not enabled. So you can add stuff like this, like if only when the event is enabled will then it go through the process of attempting to collect information about it. Let's see. Okay, perfect. All right, let me run my application again real quick. That little beeping is just, I'm sure you love it as much as I do. All right, so this kind of did some arbitrary processing of work. And we can then see our summary. Let's see. So we can then also see how my delay event in this case is also being captured. Something that's very useful though is JFR. JFR can. Is there's a number. So I showed from the command line ways of of configuring JDK Flight Recorder, but you can also record it, or there's also other recordings when you, in this case, this is obviously just an XML file that is defining how events are captured and also some other ways on configuring how JFR is supposed to behave when it comes to collecting events. So you can see here it already has a bunch of the built-in events, how they're being configured. I think one particularly useful form of configuration, and I'll go all the way down here at the bottom. So in this case, I would match it with the name that I gave my event earlier. So in this case, I would need to match it based upon that for configuring it and have it enabled. And let me make sure, yeah, threshold. So one issue that can come whenever you're collecting data is separating the wheat from the chaff. Because if you're collecting a lot of data, but it doesn't mean much, then it can start to just kind of snowblind you to that. So a very common one is maybe when you're timing code, like oftentimes the things I would be looking for is like I'm having code executing and it calls out to like some sort of third-party service, and like because maybe of some sort of a data issue, like it causes like the database to really churn for a long time because someone did like the Johnny drop tables on it or something like that. Well, hopefully you're not allowing SQL injection, but all the same. But occasionally you might have certain requests that maybe take a whole long time to process. And those are the ones that are really interesting to capture to maybe try to find out what might be going on. So here you can set something called like threshold. And I'm saying like, okay, any request that takes more than 100 nanoseconds to execute, so between that begin and end, it will count how long it takes, between that point in the code. Well, actually, that's fine out here. So it'll time how long between the begin here and the end, how long it takes this code to execute. And you can say, okay, if it takes more than, in this case, I think I'm putting it down like 100 nanoseconds to execute, capture that request. If it takes less than that, then ignore it because that's within spec and we don't need to capture that. So being able to configure your events, in this case using threshold, can be very useful so that to make sure you're only capturing things that actually have a business meaningful value. There's a number of different options for doing that. To me, at least the threshold one In this case, I'm using nanoseconds. You can also use like milliseconds, whichever kind of course makes sense, again, based upon the specifics for your application. You can also see how some of these other ones, they're set up. This period one is saying this event. In this case, it's like just checking buffer statistics. So it's saying like every 5 seconds, capture the buffer statistics based on the application for that. But yeah, so out of the box, JFR provides a lot of value, but don't sleep on creating your own custom events. That can also really add a lot of enriching value to your application. Something I'm looking on updating this presentation in the future, but something you can also check out here as well on our Java YouTube channel. Damn it, I'm disconnected. One moment. So
it's easy to connect here.
I'll just use my hotspot.
Okay.
Because AI, this thing is becoming a big trend, I hear. Anyone heard of that?
Hey, what?
A what? Yeah. So one way, one major advantage Java has over other platforms is because JFR and other tooling, we have really excellent serviceability, a really great way of being able to get into the internal state of the application. And also our serviceability is also really well documented. This is great because AI tools can act as a really great ops agent. You can have it be able to create an agent that can monitor your application and be checking for if there's like maybe, whatever kind of out of bounds behavior you're concerned about, and it can attempt to, either alert you for it or even potentially issue fixes for it. So something one of my colleagues, Yagmar here, she did in this presentation is demonstrated how she developed an AI ops agent that was using JFR to monitor an application. And then when it would notice issues in the application, it could actually drill down to figure out what was actually going on, and then offer a PR to a potential fix then actually for that code. And that's also something now some of our other JDK developer or engineers have been doing as they've been researching, is that right now using AI agents to just write greenfield code for like some sort of complex thing or a full application, like it's still not quite there yet. It's getting closer, but most of the time there could still be a lot of issues with correctness of it. But for more focused tasks, like again, acting like an AI ops agent, it's actually proving to be pretty capable. So I would definitely recommend checking out this presentation as well. It's a way of using JFR without necessarily having to take all the effort to figure out all of how JFR works. So really great presentation. It's actually something I need to update in this presentation myself to also show that, because again, AI is very popular now, and that's a way of incorporating AI to some of these existing presentations. With that said, I'm kind of here at the end of it, but are there any more questions anyone has about JFR?
I have a question.
Yes.
So does JFR allows to connect to remote JVM?
Yes.
So JFR is built into the JDK itself, but using a tool like JDK Missing Control, it uses JMX. It can connect to a remote JVM. So, but yeah, there are ways of like, as I was also kind of showing here, like using JDK Missing Control or JCommand, JCMD, and then the process ID of it to turn on and or configure a JFR within a JVM. Yep.
Does the JFR expose some sort of API that you can call from within your application or something?
Yeah. Oh, that's actually something I forgot to touch on. So yeah, that is also something that was added within JFR. I think it was JDK 16 or 17 or something like that, where there's JFR streams. in here you can that can give you programmatic access to events within your application. It can be very useful for some forms of automated testing. In this case, I'm checking for if a read event or a read file event is occurring, or so I'm checking to make sure the JVM is actually reading from a file, which is really good for like handling like side effects that, you know, not a direct thing that's happening to your application. That can be very useful. Of course, also you can use this to add to like a observability endpoint. You can publish the events there, so you can go to like, you know, your application slash metrics and have, you know, this publishing values to it to read from it. Also, you know, you can also have within your application of like if it's reading these metrics, you can also have it execute arbitrary behavior based upon what's happening within JFR. So, yes.
So it's really cool to see two talks about JFR. In my previous team, we actually used this very similar to what you talk about.
Yeah.
Like we have a production service that crash about every month without any like indication on what's going on. So what we did is like use this. Like I think the two things that helped a lot is like first it's a very low overhead.
Yeah.
So I remember it was like a 1% or like 2%.
Yeah.
So we can run it with production. Then we set, I think it's like we set a fixed size. It's like a circular ring buffer. Then when it crashes, then we can analyze the log. So that helped us. The way you mentioned, very helpful.
Yeah.
So my question is like, let's say if I have let's say a fresh application built from ground up, right? So if I just write these events or write these metrics as metrics and logs, what's the difference between that way and versus using JFR?
So, like, are you talking about like writing metrics as just like normal logging, like SO? So I would say it's going to be JFR can capture a whole lot more information, like capturing like CPU statistics or memory usage and stuff like that is going to be usually pretty difficult when it comes to logging. I mean, there are some ways to do that, but it would be difficult. I would say probably one of the biggest differences, though, is actually from overhead, because logging actually has pretty high overhead because a lot of times loggers are blocking that it's, you know, when you hit a logging point, it's blocking to write out to console or write out to file, which has actually a lot of overhead. I don't have the charts here on hand, but that's like something some of the JFR engineers would do when they compare, you know, the pause times or the overhead to JFR for capturing an event compared to some comparable thing with logging. It's like, you know, like it's so like the bar graph of like, you know, logging and JFR, and like, you know, the logging would be very high up, and like you would actually have to like increase the scale of the graph to actually zoom in to see like the actual impact JFR was having. So that would be the other probably really major benefit, is the lack of overhead.
I remember the first time I saw the overhead like 1%, 2%, like it's hard to believe.
Yeah.
But just curious, like, is that do you have any insight like how JFR is able to achieve that little overhead with so much functionality?
Yeah. So
I did a deep dive video on that very subject. It's been a little bit, so I can't always offhand remember all the details, but I'll share this link with Michael, and he can share it with the group. But it goes into that. But basically, it has like a ring of buffers that it kind of dumps to, and those progressively then dump asynchronously to the file. So that's the way it's achieving its low overhead, is that all the stuff it's doing, it never blocks the application to do it.
Okay, so it's like most of the operation are in memory, so it's like very little overhead.
Yeah, exactly.
Along
Yes.
the same lines, metrics, base metrics, right, and all that. But I guess those built-in metrics are different from what the events that, or am I comparing apples to oranges?
Sorry. So
So the metrics that you get, going to use, metrics in your app. I guess those are.
Like memory.
Yeah,
CPU and
yeah.
stuff.
But I guess those events are different than what you would get from the standard output from, base metrics versus application
so, like,
metrics.
Are you talking about, like, let's say from like, oh, geez, it's been a second since I've done some of those, but like, but like using some of like the command line stuff to do, like PID or stuff like that to kind of to check like the utilization. It should be pretty close. Like I can't remember offhand some of the underlying the implementation of like how like the JVM is capturing that. Like sometimes like it can't always match because like probably like one of the biggest ones is sometimes when it comes to like memory utilization, like a lot of the tooling, it takes in the virtual memory that a JVM uses when it sets it up with a garbage collector. Like a garbage collector is like, oh, I have 16 gigabytes of virtual memory, and so sometimes it will report it as using it 16 or not 16 megabytes, 16 gigabytes of virtual memory that it has allocated. And that's just like the potential area that it could be using of memory, just so like, the garbage collection knows and where you can store stuff on the heap, but its actual utilization, it might only actively be using, 1 gigabyte of that, but like it will report as being 16 gigabytes. So like sometimes the command line tooling you're using to measure memory utilization of a JVM can report that, whereas the internal JVM metrics might report, a more accurate of what it's actively using. CPU can also be something that's notoriously difficult to actually measure as to what it's actively using. So like sometimes that could also be off a bit between maybe what you're using with the command line tool versus what JFR is reporting, but that's also just coming by what the JVM is telling it. So.
And I'm thinking too, just maybe it's extra overhead because you got to use metrics in your app and define the endpoints and.
Yeah.
So
that would be one thing to keep in mind, at least on that, is like let's say you were starting to use the JFR event stream and you wanted to produce events at like some metrics endpoint or something like that. You will want to be very conscious then of the potential overhead impact, because that could start to get above the 1% because you might be doing some sort of blocking or sending it off to something now, and then that could start to really have a potential adverse impact on the performance of your application. So at least when you're doing a recording stream, you do need to be conscious that you're going to start to impact the performance overhead of JFR. No. Yeah. Any other questions? A lot of great questions. I was glad to see it. Like, JFR is definitely one of the tools that I definitely wish I knew about back when I was like an engineer. Because like, yeah, this application once a month just crashes for some random reason, or or even not even regularly, but just like every so once in a while, like some weird data condition happens and it explodes, and it's just so difficult to figure out. If you just had something that was constantly running in the background, that could help with the diagnostics of it. And that's obviously by far the most powerful of it. And I think if anything to take away from this is really to strongly consider to start using JFR in your applications again, because JFR is built into your JDK. There's no additional configuration you need to start using it. And again, it has very low overhead. So definitely consider, adding it to your applications, and you can that way monitor them and see how you maybe improve them as well.
I think the case you just mentioned, like your colleague use AI versus JFR and can make dump like on the fly when, let's say, see symptoms and get the analysis and create a PR, create a fix. That forms a loop. So that's really powerful.
Yeah, exactly. And that's again, that is what she goes into in this presentation. Using her test example, where I mean exactly what you just said, that it can periodically pull and analyze the JFR file to see potential issues, and then how to potentially offer a fix for them. So yeah.
Dynatrace intend to use JFR or using it or something?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, for Datadog, oh geez, I'm blanking on his name, but one of their engineers, or at least one of the engineers I used to work with Datadog, I don't know offhand if he's still there, but he was actually one of the original developers for JFR. So yeah, he knows very well how it works because he wrote it. So actually, the history for JFR, it actually goes back to the JRocket days. So JRocket used to be another JVM implementation that was originally developed by JRebel, that was then bought by BEA, and then BEA was bought by Sun, and Sun was bought by Oracle. So, but it was all combined into the Hotspot JVM, and chances are that's the JVM that you're using as well, because that covers about 99% of all the active running JVMs in the world. So. But yeah, Datadog, Dynatrace, all the APMs that are in the Java space, a lot of them are hooking into JFR for producing metrics. They're probably doing some other things just beyond that as well, but that's also a big part of how they're collecting their metrics. Awesome. All right. Well,
questions?
Yep.
I asked online, nobody responded.
All right.
So there's 2 people watching. Thank you for joining out there in television land.
Fantastic.
If I can do my honeymooner's impression. Yeah, got my mic. Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Oh,
First of all, thank gsjug/reveal.js. gsjug.org.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's thank Billy first.
Thank you.
You know, I remember your presentation at Java 25 with that, and I thought I had the example. I thought I played with it. I couldn't find it. That's what I was looking for when you were talking about
it really works. Yeah.
Jakarta E. Yeah. So I don't know what you said about Jakarta E, but. Yeah.
Oh, I was just teasing that,
well,
like it's a source of trouble.
Oh yeah, well I'm a source of trouble.
Yeah, no.
So
or you know, I'll let you drive.
Oh, okay. But yeah, so thanks, Paul. This is good stuff. It's something I definitely need to experiment with more.
Exactly. Yeah. Awesome.
But yeah, so to wrap up, just a few things here. Upcoming events, KCDC.
Yes, that's right.
We have a KCDC Loves Java for a 10% discount if you want to see Kansas City and have some barbecue. Let's see, that's in.
It's September 9th through.
Will the Chiefs be in town, or
Yeah, yeah. I guess they will be starting. I think probably soon after that. I think it's Monday after. But it's September. So actually, it's more September 9th through 11th. September 12th, we're hosting a kids tech day for getting kids involved in that. But yeah, one of the nice things about KCDC. So is that we're a polyglot conference. So of course we have a Java track, but then we also have .NET, JS, we have a couple of AI tracks, project management, and a bunch of other stuff. So it's a really great place to actually talk to people outside of the Java space. So, at least for me, it's also nice. Like there's a bunch of speakers that I only see at KCDC because usually we're all off in our own little silos of being in the Java world or .NET world. So that's one of the nice things. A great cross-pollination opportunity.
Yeah, I'd like to get out there one of these days for that.
Absolutely.
Especially if the Saints are in town.
Yeah, when the Saints go marching through.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. And then Dev2 Next, as you know, I sent the email from Venkat. We're a community sponsor again this year. And similar to Arc of AI, there'll be raffles this month, next month in September. So if you want to get involved, if you go to the site, I think there's a QR code to register to be in the running for a free ticket. And then there's a Garden Jug discount code for $50 off. That's another conference I need to get to.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure there's others that I didn't remember, but Jakarta 1, speaking of Jakarta.
Yeah, exactly.
Jakarta 1 live stream is December 1st. The call for papers is open in case you're interested. And I submitted something on Jakarta EE12, so fingers crossed. It's all virtual. It's a great conference. It's, you need to dedicate the entire day if you want to see all the talks. So that, let's see. And then upcoming for us. So I have the details from Gerrit Grunwald and Ivar Grimstad coming in September. It's also on a Wednesday. They're going to do the same thing that you're doing, going to Philly, us, and then New York.
Fine.
So there's two presentations that you can see on the screen there. And so look forward to more details on that. The website is updated for that. Working with Simon Maple, and he's interested in coming to visit with us in October. And I have the 21st as a tentative date. I'm waiting to hear back from Frank and from Jason at Philly, about if they, they have some opportunity to host him. So stay tuned for that. That would be awesome. Let's see. And so the Friends of GS Jug, if you'd like to go to New York tomorrow night to see Billy again, he's going to talk about Java is data, about data-oriented
Programming.
Right. So that's where's the venue again, Barry?
It's down in Lower Manhattan.
Manhattan, okay.
CD Creatives is the name of the place.
Okay.
FIDI Creatives.
CD Creates. Okay. I think
And
I've
this
seen
little
that,
place called New York.
New York. You got to say it right. New York.
York.
And then our friend Eric DeAndrea, who was here sometime last year, he'll be up in the Boston area. That group also tomorrow. So you gotta, if you want to drive to Boston or New York, So anyway, let's see, what else? We got Central Iowa Jug. They have Kyle Haynes, who's going to talk about AI agents, as you see in the title there. And then the Kansas City Jug on the 21st.
Yep.
Okay. Sam Gammon and Elite. I think I've seen reference to that.
Yeah, they've been doing a lot of advertising. So
there's another one, Elia, E-L-I-Y-A, that just came out. Trying to remember what it did, but yeah, that's another new one. That's a lot of good stuff out there. People are building. Let's see, and then I mentioned this earlier. The Atlanta Jug, they're going to have a watch party on the movie I referenced earlier today. And the Dublin Jug, yes, Dublin, Ireland. Okay, so they are going to meet on the 29th and have something called Deep Talk. Embeddings aren't a search strategy. And I think that's, Philly. So they already have August scheduled. Billy was there last night to talk Illuminated Java, which is what we originally chose. But since Garima gave the virtual threads talk last month, just
that makes sense.
Didn't want to have two, similar talks. Chicago didn't have anything this month, and neither did the Connecticut folks. So let's see. With that, Vladimir Shapovalov won the license to IntelliJ IDEA. Of course, I just ran that today, okay, a month later, so apologize for that. But yeah, so he was the winner for June. And, this is just the resources you can look on your own. I'm not going to go through them. I did not mention this at the beginning. There are QR codes scattered amongst the seats. This is what gets you in the running for a free license to IntelliJ IDEA. And also it provides us attendance information. We'd like to keep track, so we we can tell people, we had 100 people at our, at our meeting last month, that kind of thing. So yeah, I'll keep that up for a couple of minutes, or if you want to scan that, we appreciate you signing in for that. And I promise to run my random number thing sooner rather than later. Did I mention August? Oh, yeah, I think I skipped over it. Let's see. Oops, I went too far. Oh, here we go. Oh, I didn't put August in there. It's on the website. I have on the website a summer break for next month. However, our good friend Steve Poole sent an email early this morning saying he'd like to come visit a lot of the jugs in the United States and maybe even around the world, because he's based out of England, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. So, so I reached out to Frank and to Jason, and let's see if we can get him here next month. If not, other people have been making requests for November, December. So
Again,
Yeah.
summer's a perfect time for a pool party.
that's right. And I'll have to remember that next time I see him. Steve's a great guy. We meet up at the conferences, and he's just a pleasure to be around. So all right. So yeah, I forgot to mention that. So just stay tuned. We get the emails. So with that, we have our famous beer and chocolate AI generated that Barry put together. So, so yes, I look forward to going home and having a pint or two. Yeah, so safe travels home. Thanks for coming out on such a nice day, and seeing Billy's presentation on JDK Flight Recorder. So we'll see you hopefully next month, maybe not. See you in September. So, thanks. All right.